Event Viewer is one of the most powerful tools we have when it comes to troubleshooting any type of error related to the operating system, applications on the operating system, even viewing security related events. So back in my Server Manager, I'm just going to go to Tools, and in the Tools list, I'm going to click on Event Viewer. Event Viewer is built into all operating systems. So it's in the Windows 7, Windows 10, and all other client OSs, and all the server OSs as well. In Event Viewer, the first thing I'm going to do is expand the Windows logs. You could go all the way back to Windows 2000, and we've had 3 core logs. The application log records all application-related events. There's a system log, which records operating system-related events. And there's a security log. Now, the security log is always a little bit different. That is really the audit log. If I'm in a domain environment, the security log would audit, fail log on attempts, successful log on attempts, those types of things. So it's not so much a troubleshooting log, just an audit log of certain security related events that have happened on the system. Well, when I click on any of these, I'll choose my system log here. You can see I have 3,121 events in the system log. Now, every event has a date and time, it has a source, and it also has an event ID. Now, what I can do if I click on one of these events and I feel like I don't get enough detail, I'm just going to open this one here. This just tells me the Windows modules installer service and enter the running state. Well, if you're looking at an error message, sometime you may read this and feel like you need a bit more information. What you can do is go out to the internet, to Google or Bing, any of these search engines, and you can actually Google the source in combination with the event ID, and usually you can get detailed information. Many of these are also on the TechNet site of Microsoft.com, so pretty useful, but sometimes lacking a bit of information there. Now, there are 3 types of events that show up. You'll notice all these are information-related events. Well, if I scroll down that list, now we may have to filter it to find. So all mine seem to be information events. There's also warnings and errors. Now, a few things we can do. Well, one, all of these columns actually sort themselves. So I'm going to click on Level, and it will resort that column. So now when I scroll back to the top, so now this is sorted alphabetically. So C, E, W for warning. So I can see I have some errors that show up. I have some warnings and the informational events we saw. Those are the 3 main types of events that show up. Now, there are a few others that you don't see nearly as often. Like I have this critical event related to my task scheduler. So occasionally you'll see critical and a few others, but big 3, error, warning, and information related events. A few of the most useful benefits of this. Well, one, if I right click this log, I do have the ability to filter the log. So I'm going to click on Filter Current Log. This would let me actually go through and say, I only want to view errors. I could also filter based on the type of source, if I know it's related to a specific source. If I know it has a specific event ID, which again, that event ID shows up here in this event ID column. So if you know exactly the type of event you're looking for, if you figure out the event ID, key in that event ID. I could also whittle this down for certain types of events to search a username and or a computer name. So pretty useful to kind of cut down through thousands, tens of thousands of events. Just filter what you know you want to see. Now, one of the issues that Event Viewer has long had is it's too broad. Application and system. On a OS that's been running for any amount of time, you would have tens of thousands of events. So one of the things Microsoft has done is they've actually created component level logs. So I'm going to expand this application and services logs. So if I click that, it expands down. Well, you can see on this system, I have an event log for hardware, Internet Explorer, Windows PowerShell. If I continue to expand Microsoft, and I'm going to expand this Windows folder, I'm also going to slide this window over a bit just to adjust this. But when I look under this Windows folder, I have hundreds of component level logs show up. To scroll down the list, you can see I have logs for audio, Bluetooth, backup has its own event log. Really every component of the operating system, containers, a lot of things related to devices, DHCP related events, disk, DNS related events. Well, I'm just going to keep scrolling. Microsoft Paint. I don't believe I have ever broken Microsoft Paint, nor has a user, not that I recall, ever informed me that they have broken Microsoft Paint and needed assistance with it. But it has its own event log that actually shows up here, the MS Paint. What Microsoft has done is basically said, any of the components of the operating system that can generate events, we're just going to create a separate log for them so they have a filtered view. Well, if I just keep scrolling down the list, you'll see, if we keep scrolling, TCP/IP has its own event log. The Windows Store, which is just titled Store. Well, if I expand the store, I can see I have 378 events related to the store. Some errors, warnings, informational events, and others. There's a log for VPN clients if you VPN into your network. Even WordPad has its own event log. So that's an extremely useful view to be able to go through and look at these logs at a component level instead of trying to search or filter through 100,000 events. A few other crucial things we want to look at here. One is subscriptions. The first time you click on subscriptions, like the first time ever, you get this little pop-up message telling you that you have to start this Windows Event Collector service. Well, this just asks me if I want to actually start that service. I'm going to say yes. So that starts the service right now, and it also changes the startup type to automatic. So in the future, every time this machine reboots, that service will always be running. Well, I'm going to go to subscriptions. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a subscription. What I can do with a subscription is just give this a name, and I'm just going to call it test, since we're just doing this for a demo. Normally you'd give that something related to the types of events you want to see. Maybe, security events or something like that. But what this allows me to do is select a computer so I can actually search Active Directory. So I'm going to click Advanced and Find Now. Now this will ask me to authenticate. I'm going to just choose my credentials here. And this gives me a list of machines in the domain. Well, I'm just going to click DC01, say OK. And OK. Now that I have a computer selected, I can select events. This event logs here gives me a list of all the Windows logs we saw. Application, security, and system were the big three. And it even lets me drill down through the component level logs. If we go to Microsoft Windows. So I can select any of these logs here. I'm just going to click the application log. But choose your log, and you can choose multiple logs. I can choose any event source. I'm just going to choose all sources. But application log, whatever source you want, and I can also choose a specific event ID. Well, when I select all those things, what happens, every time that computer I selected here records an event that meets this subscription, it's actually going to forward a copy of that event to my machine. When that event is forwarded, it actually will show up here, if I go back to Windows logs, under these forwarded events. So that is some semblance of centralized logging. I have one place I can go to and now see these events that have been pulled from multiple machines. The last thing we want to touch on is the ability to attach a task to an event. So I'm going to go back to my system log here. In my system log, I'm going to just right click on one of these error messages, and there's an option to attach a task to this event. If I choose that, now because I have the event and I actually right clicked on the event itself, when I click next here, you'll see it automatically populates the log name, so the system log, source, and the event ID. Now if I didn't actually have the event, I could have went over here and attached a task, and it would have let me fill all of this in. So if you have cleared the event log, but you know the information, you could just fill this in a blank screen. Well, I'm going to choose next here. This gives me the option to start a program. So with this start a program, if I click next, I could actually browse or type in the path to a PowerShell script or a Visual Basic script, even a batch file. This event is simply the trigger for this task that would run a script. So let's say my problem is, when this event happens, my users can't print. We'll pretend that's what this event is related to. I know to solve this, I need to stop a service and then have the service start again. I could have a batch file that does exactly that. Stops the service, then it starts the service. This task simply gets triggered when that event occurs. Now, if we go back a few screens, there is an option to send an email, which was an awesome option, where you could have an email sent to like the help desk to say, hey, this has happened, I need attention, or you could display a local message. But do notice both of these say deprecated, and they no longer work in the operating system natively. You have to have some sister center components and agents for those to work. So they're still in the list, but they are non-functional unless you run System Center in your environment. So I'm just going to cancel that task there, and that's what we wanted to look at within the event viewer itself.